as well. So here's the deal. We're coming to you live from the Seaport District at Pier 17, brought to you by Chase, Andy Reid, his two most recent offensive coordinators, Matt Nagy, and, of course, Doug Peterson, with varying levels of success. Peterson, of course, has won a Super Bowl. Nagy had a quick start and a fast descent. But yesterday, both of their quarterbacks showed up big. So the question, fellas, is, and I know they don't have Andy Reid's quarterback to fall back on. Amazing Mahomes stat coming up here in just a moment. But, Key, straight up, bigger mistake. The Eagles not going to Jalen Hurts earlier on Peterson's end, or Matt Nagy pulling Mitch Trubisky earlier in the season only to go back to him now?
I think it's Matt Nagy pulling Mitch Trubisky at 3-0. When you look at the situation, there was really no need to go to Nick Foles other than the fact that you had some familiarity with Nick Foles and you felt like, I traded for him, I signed off on this, now I have to prove to everyone that this is going to work. When Mitch Trubisky was 3-0 and he kind of, things were fine. He wasn't playing like Aaron Rodgers, and he wasn't playing like the third quarterback on somebody's team. But you certainly made it feel that way to the people out there that don't really watch football, that just see it and hear about it in the media. Because when you're 3-0, no matter how you got there, you don't mess with the chemistry. You allow it to continue to keep going to such time that it's not working anymore. And then when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles on that side, they waited a little bit too late, but I also understand why they did it, because as I've always told you, Jay Will, you follow the money. And the money got caught up in this situation this time around for the Eagles, and it could ultimately hurt them at the end of the day.
Key, I'm with you all day on this one, man. I agree with you on the Eagles situation. Because of the money allocated towards Carson Wentz, you have to give it some time, even though I've been pushing for Jalen Hurts a lot earlier. But the Matt Nagy, Ryan Pace situation is disturbing when you watch it, just about how Mitchell Trubisky played yesterday. Now, I know people can use the counter argument and say, well, the Texans are horrible. And, but still, he won the game. He threw for 3 TDs. He looked really good yesterday. But imagine this, Keyshawn, for 1 second. Is there a chance that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace can save their jobs if Mitchell Trubisky continues to play like this, if he plays at a hot pace? Can we be looking at a team at 6-7, just like the Vikings, that all of a sudden get hot later in the season? Matt Nagy now making that comment, our offense is finally starting to come together. Their defense stepped up. It was the first time you saw a complete Bears team. Is there a chance we can see both these guys employed next season?
Here's how you do that, Jay. You step to your presser, and the question's asked, and you go, you admit you're wrong. You just say, hey, we thought that we can get a little spark going. Our offense could be a little more potent from Nick Foles. The fact that it wasn't made us make a decision to go back to Mitch. Mitch was healthy the entire time. We played with it in our minds. We talked about it as a staff, and then we made a decision that this was the right call because we love this young man. We think he has a bright future ahead of us. Hey, we made a mistake. Mistakes are made, and you just play that game as you continue to keep winning, and then people will go, oh, okay, yeah, we forgive him, and that's how you save your job.
But, Key, how do you do this if Mitchell Trubisky continues to play well? You haven't signed him.
Well,
you haven't extended him, right? But you have Nick Foles for another 2 years.
Yeah, but it's not that you haven't signed him. You didn't extend the fifth-year option. So you now get into a situation where you try to figure out if you want to move long-term with him. Not even necessarily long-term. You want to have him come back and, fight for a starting spot, battle it out. And I'm sure that I know they can't franchise him, but I'm sure they probably can do something to keep him on board for next spring to fight it out with whoever it is that they want to bring in and fight it out with. If it's Nick Foles, which they owe Nick Foles about $9 million of guaranteed money. If I was the Chicago Bears, I'd go to Nick Foles and say, hey, man, you need to take a pay cut, or we need to figure out how to extend you only as a backup and give Mitch Trubisky another shot if I'm coming back. But I don't know that they'll come back. I don't know that the Chicago Bears and their fan base want Pace and Nagy back, no matter what the season ends up like.
Well, I was going to say, that's exactly what all my friends out in Chicago were talking about yesterday. They were like, look, it's great that we got a win. It's great that Mitchell Trubisky proved that he's better than Deshaun Watson for one day. But at the end of the day, we still don't want Matt Nagy around. We still don't want Ryan Pace around. We want to move on, and we want to continue to build in a rebuild type of direction.
Couple things to mention here. Jeff Dickerson, our ESPN Bears reporter, is going to join us for his perspective at 7:45 a.m. Eastern, so hang tight for that. We should mention Key's talking about next spring for the Bears, what they might or might not do. From next spring, short-term, fellas, next week, right now, the Vikings sit in the 8th spot at 6-7. The Bears are in the 9th spot at 6-7. Oh, by the way, this Sunday, Chicago at Minnesota, gigantic game. Keep in mind, of course, the Bears started 5-1 and then petered out. The Vikings started 1-5 and played great football up until yesterday, when they obviously are going to be kicking themselves all the way back to the Twin Cities. Here's Mitch Trubisky on how he stayed locked in, as Jay said, for the one day he was better than Deshaun, who was devoid of a ton of weapons yesterday, by the way. No excuses. Mitch on staying on track.
I think I was just so focused on what I need to do for my team that it really allowed me to block everything else out. Just the situation where we were in, being on that little losing streak. That makes you sick to your stomach. So I was willing to do whatever it took for the team today to just go out there and get a win. Whether it was handing the ball off every time or throwing it every time. Obviously, that's extreme, but I was willing to do whatever it took to get out here and get a win, and that's what we did. I thought we played really well today. It was a great team win. All three phases really stuck together, and we just got to continue to finish in the second half.
Key, 24 for 33, 267 yards, 3 touchdowns. And there was one thing that we're showing here this morning, if you're watching on ESPN News, and something that you may have seen if you were watching the game yesterday. Just take me inside the mind of a wide receiver, a quarterback, the special connection they have. When Trubisky came off the field, drive after drive, Allen Robinson was right there just pounding his shoulder pads, just trying to pump him up. I understand you can't manufacture this stuff all the time, but when your quarterback is reeling and you see something like that, can that have long-ranging, reverberating effects, or is that a thanks for showing up today, now let's do it tomorrow type deal?
No, that just shows the relationship. Allen Robinson obviously has a relationship with Mitch Trubisky, and that just goes to show you that the team may have not been down on him as much as the coaches. Allen Robinson certainly knows that he's a guy who can get him the football, where Nick Foles, on the other hand, probably struggled to get Allen the football at times. And so when you look at it from a receiver standpoint, you always want to make sure you put your arms around the quarterback, not just selfishly for the football, but to make him know no matter what, you're behind him, you're with him. Now, people would say that's calling the game, or people that was watching the game could say, oh, he's happy he's getting the football, he's buttering him up. No, he knows what his teammate can do, and he probably has full confidence in his ability, even though us as outsiders, we look at it and say Mitch Trubisky can't play dead in a cowboy movie half the time. He knows because he plays with him. He sees him every day in practice.
Key, going to their next game about the Vikings is just interesting. I know that the Bears looked better against the Lions. I know that they played against a Texas team that was actually just depleted in weapons. I feel so bad for Deshaun Watson, not only because he lost DeAndre Hopkins at the beginning of the year because of the ineptitude of Bill O'Brien, but we fast forward, now no Brandon Cooks, he didn't play. No David Johnson, he didn't play. Like, who is Deshaun Watson even working with? And Zubin, I know you said no excuses, but damn, who is he working with there on this team? How much confidence do you have in this Bears team against the Vikings, considering how good Dalvin Cook and these guys are playing?
Well, you got a lot of confidence, Jay.
You do?
You got a lot of confidence because they know each other. It's a division rival. They see each other twice a year. Maybe even sometimes if they can get into the playoffs, they'll play each other 3 times a year. So you got to have confidence in this football team moving forward. And you look at the Bears, they got the Vikings at 6-7. They play the Jags. I think the Jags are 1-12. And then they finish up with the Green Bay Packers, depending on where the Packers are at, depending on that Week 17 game. If the Packers somehow finish strong enough in New Orleans fall, and all of a sudden the Packers got the home field advantage throughout the playoffs, maybe Week 17 is a gimme game. Aaron Rodgers is rested up, and you finally get your glimpse of Jordan Love in the huddle, and now Minnesota can take advantage of that situation. So it's one of those deals where Chicago and Mitch Trubisky just needs to do what he did yesterday, and they need to play defense and figure out how it's going to end for him in the end.
And we mentioned, obviously, not just Mitch Trubisky, but the situation with Jalen Hurts and Doug Peterson. We'll dig into that next when we ask Carson Wentz's biggest supporter at ESPN what he thought of Jalen Hurts' performance yesterday. That's after Key has this from Walmart.
You're cold, Zubin. You're cold.
Free shipping is great. Free shipping, no minimum. That's Walmart Plus magic for your holiday. Get all your last-minute shopping done with free next day or 2-day shipping on a huge selection of eligible items from Walmart.com with no order minimum. Free shipping means the freedom to click that order button to your heart's content. Just another